All right, let's get started on the next topic here, which is eventlet removal. Well, it's a short form for a lot of things that are going on across our community, and uh, I am just going to make a small introduction and then have our main speaker, um, you know, take us through what the goal is and what we are doing today, and very briefly, we will be discussing this topic in more of a depth on Wednesday, and you can find the schedule for that on the PTG website. But for this is our cross project, discussion where we have more people. Um, in one room so we can talk synchronously. So please, if you're adding any topics to this, go ahead and start typing them out, and if you have questions, please raise your hand, so that we can go in an orderly fashion. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Herv Broad, who would be championing this effort. This was a goal proposal, and so there are some links out here, but Herv might take us through a presentation.
You. I will share my screen. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and so we might have to remove the shared document for a bit. So, and that's something that each of you can do. Click on the three dots and say "Close shared document." You should be able to view her screen when he starts sharing it.
Um, okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for joining us today. To analyze if an IT project is problematic, we can rely on a couple of criteria. Those criteria are technological, financial, legal, ethical, and even environmental. By using these criteria, we can identify issues before they become critical. This methodology helps us assess our tools from multiple angles so we can make informed decision and avoid unpleasant surprise. By example, if we take the financial criteria, we will check the maintenance cost or the technologies we use profitable in long run. If we take the legal compliance, we will check on regulation. Do our technologies comply with current regulation like GDPR? In case of security breach, we will still in compliance, etc., etc. This kind of methodology allows us to evaluate our technologies holistically. A problem rarely arises in just one area. If during this kind of audit we can identify issue in two distinct areas, then we can consider we have diagnosis as a genuine problem. By analyzing at least two criteria, we can spot warning signs and avoid interpretive bias. And that Eventlet check all the box of this kind of analysis. Eventlet is problematic technology, and I think Eventlet is a perfect recipe to cook a crisis. Eventlet is a black box for many of us, especially OpenStack developer, who maybe do not understand what their code is doing. Eventlet security all could put our employers in front of legal courts. Eventlet is free, but it costs thousands of dollars each day because the Eventlet gives us many bugs who are routable. So let me walk through one of the main reasons why it's crucial for us to stop maintaining and using Eventlet in our project. First, Eventlet, in order to keep up with new version of Python, has had to fork module for the Python standard library that is now deprecated and maintained. This is a significant issue on its own, but looking ahead with the release of Python 3.13, we will face the same challenge again, especially with the threading module. We will have to fork it or do some kind of things. Now, let's consider what this really means. Forking, deprecating, and maintained module create a real risk for stability and security of our project. From experience, we know that relying on unmethoded forked technology introduces vulnerability and many problems to maintenance. So to sum up, continuing with Eventlet, with its repeated reliance on forking outdated module leads us into a technical dead end. The need to transition away from Eventlet is not just important, it's urgent to ensure the long-term stability, security, and evolution of our project. Migrating to modern supported solution is imperative. This is where we must focus our effort. So we can ask some kind of question. Do we want Eventlet to become a poor and mainnet fork of CyPython? Do we want our project really relying on it? I think we all agreed to say no. One day, I read a definition of professionalism that I found really interesting. I found this definition from Atul Gawande. It's a great professor of surgery at Harvard Medical School. And his definition of professionalism relied on three pillars. Altruism, who are responsible for those who depend on us before ourselves. For example, for a doctor, it would be his patient, for a lawyer, his client, and for us, it's our customers. The second pillar is skills. We aim for excellence. We pay particular attention to our knowledge and our level of expertise. And reliability is the third pillar. We are responsible for our personal behavior and we do what is necessary to improve it. All our community members shown that they match these three pillars of professionalism. We all care about our customer and our customer know that we can count on us. All backing effort from the community show our dedication. We all agreed to secure our project and all together we created momentum. What is your solution? Your solution is quite simple, moving away from Eventlet. We want to remove our dependency on Eventlet and we want to lead Eventlet to this event retirement. It will be a collective effort because we have to refactor all our development that depend on Eventlet. But once done, we will be ready for the next coming decades. By doing that, we will offer a sustainable future to our loved OpenStack. We will have to replace all our Eventlet occurrence by model alternative. We identified at least three main alternatives: Async.io, Thread, and Eventlet. Async.io is designed to manage asynchronous network I/O, which is one of the primary use cases of Eventlet. Thread, in their way of functioning, are close to the current way of functioning of Eventlet. Indeed, to function, Eventlet rely on Greenlet, and Greenlet is responsible for creating a coroutine, but its way of work is close to threading, unlike Async.io. And the last but not the least is Eventlet. Eventlet is born from SQL Alchemy. At the origin, it was an internal module of SQL Alchemy, and this is how SQL Alchemy managed its evolution to async world. My teammate Mike Bayer extracted this module from SQL Alchemy to create Eventlet just for us. We can really thank Mike for doing that. The first step of our migration process is to provide some new async backend engine, like the new one, the new OsloDB driver. Some of you or maybe already seen the patch. This new driver is based on Async.io and it was created also by Mike. we still have to understand some use case like RPC communication to see if we need to implement some slow messaging async driver. In parallel with that, many services rely on slow services to manage their execution and their task. But as slow service itself rely on eventlets, and as we heavily use slow services, we have to migrate a slow service away from Eventlet loop too. A discussion is currently running on the Oslo spec to see how we can remove Eventlet from Oslo services. And then once done, in parallel, all OpenStack services will have to start their migration. The Oslo service, the OpenStack services will start first because there are those which monkey patch our stacks. Indeed, library only on Eventlet because services are recurring the usage of Eventlet, so library cannot be migrated first. Library will just provide some kind of new backend driver. What is the current status of the migration? During the last week and even the last month, we made several progress. During the last month, we get the maintenance of Eventlet because Eventlet was unmaintained. Nobody was there to merge patch, so we get the key. We are now able to merge patch and ensure that we remain safety during the migration. We also introduced the support of async IO in Eventlet because Eventlet was not compatible with async IO a few months ago. So doing this answer us to make the migration smoother because we can make Eventlet and async IO coexist in the same process. Although we've shown good engagement from our community to make this removal happen, and this is no an official community goal. So we are on the right path to moving away from Eventlet. No, it's your turn. We need you. We need your help to address two main challenges. This migration is going to be impactful, and without a strong understanding of our environment, and without your help, we risk to waste resources and times. The first challenge that we want to address is to gain better understanding of your use case. Together, we need to identify where are your long-running requests. This is for two reasons. The first one is to see if we need to implement the new async driver that I speak about a few minutes ago. We need to know if we want to implement the new driver and the new backend in Oslo. By example, in Oslo messaging or in Oslo catch. In other words, we want to see if our Oslo library that do network IO would require some asynchronous behavior that are for now provided by Eventlet. And the second reason, and maybe the most important one, and maybe the one that you will the more take about, is to avoid you to waste your time and resources. Indeed, we have several alternatives at your disposal, but their cost is not the same. By example, using async IO, make your code explicitly async, but yeah, all your code must be transitioned async, meaning that you have to spread your async IO refactor all along your project code or model. If your async chain of call is short, that's not really a problem. But if your call to a network blocking IO is deeply rooted in a submodule of a submodule of a submodule, then you are ready to re-implement all your project. and this is really impactful. On the other side, a thread are close to the way Eventlet is working. So thread could deeply decrease the amount of code to refactor, but thread are not really designed to manage async IO. They are more reserved to CPU bound tasks, etc. And the bad usage of thread can really impact the performance of the system. And to finish, Eventlet is a good compromise between thread and async IO. However, Eventlet internally rely on Gridlet, and unfortunately, Greenlet currently also faces the same maintenance issue that we faced a few months ago with Eventlets. So if we rely too much on a Greenlet, in the near future we could maybe face the same situation that we are facing now with Eventlet. The good news is that Eventlet could allow us to smoothly introduce async IO at the middle level of our deliverable, shortening the path toward the full migration to async IO or reducing the thread usage. As said Gutam a few minutes ago, Thursday we will have another session. We will be more technical, and we will let you between Mike his expert hands for technical exploration. So if you have questions, I encourage people and team to think about what can be the impact of this removal on your deliverable. And I encourage you to come back with us Wednesday and to discuss about this specific use case. And we just finish this presentation, and I will let Gutam go to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And if you could stop sharing your screen, and folks could click on the three dots, and you can open your shared document again. So let's step back into the Etherpad. We have a few questions that we can take first before we check in on the rest of that. All right. I think first, I think, Hervé, is this possible to make your presentation available? Probably a link.
You mean the PowerPoint?
The PowerPoint, yes.
This is it is hosted in my Google Red Hat account. I don't see if I can share it to everybody, but I can share it.
Okay.
I can share the link. Let me grab the link.
Awesome. Thank you. And there are some questions in line. I think, John, have you had a good example where async IO is going to be a problem? And I suppose folks have started answering that question already. And there is some threading around the alternatives and the threads and Eventlet and async IO.
I mean, I don't want to. I really try to avoid jumping into very hard technical discussions, but it appeared to me over the last cycle that there are many ways to solve that problem. So before jumping into solutions, I would like to step back a little and see. I mean, I know this would be a goal, and here I'm speaking with the PTL hats. What exactly do we attend? What exactly do we expect from the projects for that goal? Because every single project will probably have the responsibility to migrate off Eventlet with their own set of limited resources. Do we like expect some kind of A, good practices, B, frameworks, C, tools, D, libraries? Do we have any kind of possibilities for the projects to basically say, oh, actually, even if you consider that this specific path is like nice, we have the option to choose another path because X or Y, even without justifying that. I mean, I'm sure that as soon as I stop, there will be like 100 of people having different opinions about what's the best solution. That's why I really want to avoid that specific technical discussion because I think that probably be, I mean, that should maybe be reserved to Wednesday talk. I mean, I don't know, but how people see about the I would say the way to handle that migration, because I think it's pretty clear. We have to do something. I'm not debating whether we should be doing this or not. I'm debating about the way forward.
So I think that the way to support what you're getting at is that I'm not even sure that all of Nova will choose the same approach. Like I feel like it's probably quite likely that like Nova Compute and Nova API might end up behaving differently here. Like I could certainly see a future longer term where Nova API is much more async IO native than Nova Compute. And there will be some places where we have to share some common code, obviously, and that code will have to be flexible and agnostic. But like, I think it's unlikely that all of Nova will end up with exactly the same approach. However, I think that all of Glance may very well, kind of be able to iterate towards a single thing, but that necessarily means that whatever Glance ends up doing as all of Glance, I'm just using Glance as an example because of like how it works, but like I don't think that all of Nova will. And so I think that kind of is the nail in the coffin for saying all of OpenStack will choose the same thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Erno?
Yeah,
I think what Dan said there, I think that's not a bad thing, and we have the opportunity now to choose what works best for each use case rather than trying to force one size fits none approach. So just wanted to bring that out, like for once I'm very much agreeing with Dan there that that's might be a good thing. Actually, it might be opportunity rather than challenge to deviate from a single solution.
Erno and I did agree on one thing earlier, so this is definitely not the first time, but yeah.
True, but it's rare.
Thank you. Jay?
Yeah, so one thing I was just thinking about is more so than a lot of other like sort of OpenStack wide goals we take on, this is going to have a pretty complex dependency tree. And so I was wondering if there's value in like, I mean, I almost want a project manager for something like this. Like I definitely am not it, but that's the direction I'm thinking is like, is there going to be an effort taken to like lay out the steps that we're going to take so that maybe, I can anticipate when, certain changes might be landing in Oslo so that, as service projects or stuff, we can plan when it's going to be ready for us to pull the trigger on some of that migration?
Yeah, and I think I can answer that question. So part of that is, so there is a wiki page that'll answer much of that question, and then there might be some gaps that I can fill. So the wiki page is linked on line 216. And we've been dumping quite a lot of information out there, mostly Hervé, and he's got a lot of migration tooling as well. But if you look past, I think it is also aspects about what the plan itself is, and where we'd start and what we'd do next and next. And there is a pop-up team proposal that the TC is not merged yet, but has been actively reviewing. And there's a link to that on line 276. And like any other OpenStack project, pop-up team, this is going to be a team of volunteers that'll try and keep tab of all the changes and share knowledge, and stuff. I can stop right now, and
So,
yeah.
well, before we lose that, I think that I'm not sure what exactly Jay has in mind for what the project manager needs to do. I think that I would not want that project manager to try to steer individual projects toward a particular like low-level strategy, and that async IO or one of these other things. But the conversation that's going on in the chat here about like WSGI, like we have all kind of sort of to some degree, at least upstream, converged on UWSGI, like in DevStack, as the way we do WSGI based APIs. And it would be, I think it would be unfortunate if we end up with 4 different WSGI servers that we come out of this as, because of various things. Like I would hope that that's not going to be the case. So like that's the thing where I would like that where I think a project manager, a coordinator, or someone with just a big loud stick, which maybe Jay, to try to avoid that kind of splintering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I specifically don't want to be the holder of the stick, but you're hitting the heart of what I'm talking about. This is we're in complete alignment that it's about. There's going to be a lot of decisions to be made. The WSGI server is just an obvious one to point at, and I want to make sure that we don't get 10 different decisions across 10 different projects unintentionally. If we have intentional reasons to do different stuff, that's fine.
Yeah.
If it's just people pick different stuff because we aren't talking, that's not okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Makes sense. Sylvain?
No, I mean, it took like 5 minutes to review the proposed goal, but I still struggle with finding exactly what would be the if you prefer, what would be the completion of that goal, because yeah, I mean, we spoke about the WSGI server solution. Yeah, for sure, that has to be like maybe some kind of cross-project discussion, probably some library that every single project could use in order to replace Eventlet. I mean, I know, but again, my concern is that I think that this is definitely not like a one cycle effort, rather mostly a multi-cycle effort. But despite that, I want that specific goal to be pretty clear about the completion that we expect from the projects. Because again, for Nova, maybe that's not a problem. Well, that's still a problem because we have limited set of resources, as I was saying. But for the projects, they will also be struggling with resources. And I mean, I just want to make sure that we're not expecting everything. I mean, I just want to be clear about our expectations. That's basically that's my main concern.
Yeah, it's certainly something to be taken to the goal. Thanks, Sylvain. Sean?
So just one technical point on the WSGI discussion as well. There's 2 aspects to that. One is, what do we actually use to execute the application? So we use UWSGI and DevStack for that, but we don't actually import any UWSGI code into Nova. We just have a generic WSGI application that can run, in theory, on any WSGI.
That's true of Nova, but not necessarily true of everyone. I'm pretty sure that Glance imports the UWSGI thing for Graceful Shutdown, if I remember.
Okay. But what I wanted to say there is we have a number of solutions already used in other projects. So I believe Keystone and Neutron are using Flask. to provide a library for writing a WSGI app. To me, the executor, so whether we're using UWSGI for that and the library we're using are two different things. So when we're talking about the maintenance state of something like UWSGI, that only impacts if we're using it as a library. If we're using it as a test run or like an event system, that's a different conversation, because I know that Ironic has integration for using things like Grunicorn, and there are other things. Plus, if we are going to async IO, we're going from the WSGI standard to the ASGI standard, because there's a separate thing
Right.
for that as well. So
I agree with what you're saying, although I wouldn't place as little emphasis on it as I think that you just did, because yes, that's true. If you're just a WSGI app, then you can just be a WSGI app. But the devil is in the details there a little bit, in terms of like how background threads that we do start get executed or don't get executed, and some differences about how mod WSGI works and UWSGI works. So I still would prefer that we try to stay unified on
I was
that
more
stuff.
saying we should be looking what's already in the global requirements list and reducing that rather than adding to it. We might need to add a ASGI server if we're actually moving to that.
Correct.
But we should hopefully choose one and try and because
Right.
not to bring downstream into it too much. If I actually go down to downstream, I think we're actually shipping 4 different WSGI servers at the moment, even though we actually end up running most things under mod WSGI. But just because of the dependencies that are pulled in by the RPMs and all that kind of stuff, we end up packaging them, even if we don't end up using them.
Erno's going to disagree with me now.
Yeah, Erno.
No, I'm just going to say that I hear you with the pipings in. What I'd like to bring up, I'm not sure if it was on the chat discussion there or on the Etherpad, but the benefit for ASGI is that it is compatible to run WSGI. So if we move towards ASGI, we can still run our WSGI applications on top of that, which would go towards what Sean said, reducing the stack rather than building it up.
And if that is performant and flexible and whatever, then yes, I totally agree. So if that can be the one, then all the better. And if not, I just don't want to end up with 8. If we need a WSGI and an ASGI, then let's do that. If we can go with just an ASGI and everyone's happy, then definitely better.
All right, thanks for bringing that up. So that seems like something we can discuss in the Eventlet removal room on Wednesday. So please feel free to add that as a topic on that Etherpad, which I lost my line number, is on line 290. It's Doug.
I just wanted to mention to that effect, everything you just said. Yes, WSGI server can run ASGI server. An ASGI server can run WSGI. Do that successfully in production with Unicorn, because it, but it doesn't matter. But I think we also need to have a client library that will go around. Today everything we do is with requests, right? But requests is not going to support async IO, and there's a comment around OpenStack SDK doing async. I think it'd be best if we had one that we used, much like requests, rather than half a dozen, because there are multiple options out there.
There's probably 2 aspects to that. One is, I know that the SDK team with the Open API specification stuff that's going on, one of the things that they're considering from a SDK and client perspective is, could they also generate some of the client code from those API specifications? So I don't know if that's going to feed into that, but if they are going to move in that model, that's likely going to require a loud rewrite of the existing SDK code. As part of that could be normalizing on using HTTPX or AIO HTTP, etc., as a replacement. My only advice on that topic is that HTTPX is trying to at least have the same API as requests, whereas AOHTTP is not. So if we needed a single library that could be used from both contexts, which Nova might require, we might be better off going with HTTPX because you just control which one you're using by changing which client you instantiate to some degree. But that's a complex topic because we have both clients in the terms of client libraries for services to talk to each other and clients in terms of like the CLI. I don't know if it makes sense one way or another for the CLIs to require async concurrent code. At least when I was looking at things like Nova Manage and the Nova CLIs, most of the time there was no actual need for Eventlet at all. We weren't using any of its concurrency. It wasn't going to speed anything up. So just plain Python using standard library and simple approaches might work in those cases. For the actual OpenStack client, perhaps there's a need for it in the case, for example, when you do availability to zone list. That now talks to Nova, Neutron, and Cinder. Those could happen in parallel. I'm not sure if there's a performance need for them to actually happen in parallel. So that's what considering is, do we actually need this in the client code?
The client thing is like a small fraction of like the larger problem, right? Like people seem to be focusing on the network aspect of this, I think maybe because they come from projects that are largely API servers that make a few other calls to other things, but like database, message queue, long running tasks, inbound message queue manager type stuff, like all of that like has nothing to do with outbound HTTP clients requests, SDK, any of that kind of thing. And those are certainly some of the more like performance impacting decisions that like a project like Nova has to make,
I think I'm making the point that Nova uses it for concurrency model, not for networking. And
right,
that's true of several other projects, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Go ahead, Anu.
Just bringing Glance up as it was used as an example already. What Dan said about the performance and what happens under the hood versus what is just the clearly visible things we interface with. This might be one of those things when Glance gets refactored out of Eventlet, where it might actually make sense to start splitting some of the things under their own processes, like the long-running tasks might be sensible. Finally, move on to its own dedicated worker process rather than run everything within the same process stack with the API.
It would be interesting to hear from Neutron as well, because they have already started that process with the Neutron server. It was both their equivalent of a conductor handling all of the long-running RPC tasks, and it was also serving the API. So they have started doing the ability to at least split that. I don't know if they're going to make it optional, or if it's just going to be a hard switch over that you now have an equivalent of a Neutron conductor plus a Neutron API. But that's one of the challenges they had, was how do you manage those outside of the life cycle of a WSGI server so that they can actually continue for a protracted period of time.
Let me, I will answer to this in consequence. Yes, we have this actually. When using the WSGI module in Neutron, everything that is not the API itself, for example, OBN maintenance task or periodic tasks or RPC, is handled in a worker that is spawned using a flow service. So only the API is using the WSGI server and the Apache or whatever whatever WSGI server you are using, but everything else is another module. You can see that in DevStack.
All right, thank you. Just read a last couple of questions to round up the goal proposal. Is there folks that have been looking at the community goal that was proposed about a year ago, I think, and has merged as a proposed goal, but it involved a lot of documentation that could live elsewhere. So I think what Hervé has done over here is to remove a lot of the documentation from that goal and simplify it to answer many of the questions that you folks has asked over here at the beginning. who's doing what is expected of the project teams, and what is the rough estimate of timeline that we have for each of these goals. So please take a look at the goal proposal. The link is on line 228 of the Etherpad. And I think more of the technical discussion that you folks have been having over here will be followed up in the other room on Wednesday. The links are line 294 and 295 of this Etherpad. Yes, Sylvan.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a serious amount of time just to read the goal, and I basically had to go through very quickly. So it will probably require me a second round of reading in order to currently understand it. But do we expect a simplified goal proposal for projects in order to get their buy-in? Because my main concern is that while I understand the reason to document the problem and the proposed solutions, it seems to me that the goal is maybe hard to buy in, because I mean, just honestly, I don't know how to get it correctly, because again, that's why I was considering exactly what we would like to achieve, because I mean, I don't know, if we want to do this specific goal, then to me it's confused to say, look, you have to sign off to that specific goal, but I even don't know what I'm going to sign off. To be clear, it's like
I made this
12-page
comment.
contract.
Yeah, it's very nebulous, right? Because the goal really can only be try to reduce dependency. I mean, that's like you can have more words around it, but like that's the only thing that can really be meaty in there. And it seems odd to me to have, maybe we need a goal to keep people focused on that. But I mean, that's your point, right? Like if everybody's going to do a slightly different thing that works for them on the timeline that they can do, the goal can really only be like,
get rid of Eventlet,
try to reduce. Yeah, I mean, like,
yeah.
Yep, I agree.
And maybe we could refer into that goal to the wiki page that already has like a lot of information, because if, for example, if PTLs or any other maintainers want to take a look at the reasoning behind and the proposed approach and so far and so on, then they could look at the wiki page. But for the sake of that specific goal, I think that maybe getting rid of is the only option. Yeah.
Could also take the approach, since Jay volunteered to be the PM with the big stick, make it less goal oriented and more like SIG project, pushing. Because I think Jay was saying that he wasn't going to do anything else other than push on this, and he could just push on everybody in every corner, and then we don't need a goal. But no, Peroni. What is that?
Wow, we have reaction sounds. Okay. That's a point noted. I think that has happened in the past discussions, Sylvain. That is why the goal has to be this wide, I think, because there's not much we can say apart from, yes, this is the overarching thing that we want to achieve at the end. But that's where I think the documentation we're producing and like the SIG. It's not a SIG. It's more like a pop-up team, only because it has that goal that it has to be the end of Eventlet and OpenStack, and at some point this will disband, right? So that's the idea. So we will probably discuss the intricacies of that, maybe meetings, more documents, etc. Over time. But as folks have noted, I mean, it can't be a specific direction if it has to be a cross community goal.
Correct. That's why I'm saying if we're gonna buy something, if we're gonna have, I mean, as service projects, if we're gonna have to buy something, then the contract should be like a one pager and not like a 12 page at 12 page version. But that yeah. Anyway,
That was definitely
it's not.
expressed, which is why the goal proposed. Sorry, the goal that's being proposed as being selected is much shorter than the version that you saw earlier. All right. Anyone else with anything else? Go ahead, Arno.
Just quick one. Do we have actually resources to make this finally happen? Because I know we have been, as a community, talking about the problems of Eventlet for ages, but one of the big parts of that has been that it seems that there is just no people able to dedicate their time to do all the refactoring what that needs. Do we have buy-in from the big contributing organizations that people are actually able to put the needed time and effort to make this happen this time around? Or is this going to be just one of those goals that gets approved and then in 2 years time we raise our hands up and realize like just no work happened because people are not able to commit?
I think Jay wants to answer that. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. So I would say a couple of things. First of all, is that I know the initial email I sent out about this at this point almost a year ago was used as the catalyst to get some people assigned. I think that's the reason why Herv has been able to go as far. I hope I didn't murder your name. That might be the first time I've said it out loud in a public place, but has done a great job of getting this foundation drawn. So like it's one of those things of that I don't think we can any longer look at this as when are we going to start the Eventlet migration. We've got to look back and say the fact we're having this in-depth of a discussion, that wiki page existing, knowing what the alternatives are and how well they fit is evidence that we already have people working on this. And I do think we're going to have somewhat of a resource problem because we always have a resource problem. But I guess maybe a benefit here is that the stick is very aggressive. We can't stay on Eventlet forever. Eventlet is going to go away if we don't migrate. So this isn't a matter of choice. This is an existential crisis. And I hope that all of our employers, I know mine does, understands that that means we've got to be able to dedicate time to this, even if it's not going to check any feature boxes.
I think that this, what I was going to say was that I think that this is different this time because in the past we could talk about maybe we want to be off Eventlet for like soft reasons, but like this is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And unfortunately, it's not going to give us a lot of warning either. So I think it will solve the resourcing problem ultimately, either in an emergent way or whatever, when like we hit a block that we can't work past, and then it's going to be like you can spend all of your time on getting past this thing, or you can have your thing not work on the version of Python that's in, you know, a particular distro. So that's what makes it a little bit different to me. I mean, this time, I guess.
All right. I want to hand it back to Hervé. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, especially I will take a look to all the question, and I hope to see you Wednesday, and maybe we can continue the discussion more deeply there.
Can I just say one other thing?
Yes. Go ahead.
I also want to like maybe highlight that this cycle is a slurp. So I'm in Nova especially, but Glance as well. Like I'll be trying to advocate for making whatever duck arranging is possible in this cycle, but without trying. Like I definitely do not think it would be appropriate for Nova to like switch all of Nova Compute from Eventlet to real threads in this cycle and let the dust settle. I think that would be better for the next cycle, just so that, you know, we should get as much as we can that's like low risk arrangement and planning. And, you know, like Sean's got a bunch of things in Nova that are kind of low risk getting ready for this, but hoping to see the more potentially destabilizing bits, like the ability to run on a different backend runtime, come in the next cycle where people aren't expecting quite as much stability. So I saw some thumbs ups, so hopefully I'm not alone in that.
That makes sense. Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So we want to make sure we evaluate for all of those performance and scaling issues and breaking changes. So let's not make the breaking changes right away. Lining up the ducks sounds like a good plan. John? I'm not sure.
I should learn
Yeah.
how to use a mute button.
Oh.
I was saying +1 to you, Dan. But the other part of this was just with a sort of more operator hat on, it'd be really good to know where you want activation and help when the plans are drawn. Maybe, so that we said about a PM, but a coordinator to flag bear and say, hey, these are the things, Mr. Community, that we could really do with a hand on. Coordinating that as a single voice would be really useful in terms of concentrating efforts on, you know, this small time slice that people have.
Jay will be sending an email, I think.
Yeah, I heard that. Sounds good.
So for context about us, I know we need to probably wrap this up quickly. The types of things I was proposing is any place we're doing Eventlet the import queue, for example. Stop doing that. Just use the standard library version and swap those out, because we know the monkey patch. Yes, there are dragons in some cases where there's C modules, but as much as possible, get rid of direct imports to stuffed via Eventlet. One of the things that are usually low risk, and we can test those and etc. Doing things like swapping to other messaging and threading mode probably shouldn't be done by default. It might work still, but we probably shouldn't be doing those kind of changes. If you've got a CLI that was monkey patch but never actually used Eventlet, just dropping those into a separate folder that isn't monkey patched and shipping them as you are is probably okay. Where you need to be careful is, are you using it in an indirect way? So one of the things that caught me in my initial POC was the NovaNC proxy server doesn't explicitly use Eventlet anywhere, but we're using WebSoxify and we have something there that happens to be using it. So we're concerned about the performance. It may actually continue to work, but we actually need to make sure we're not regressing the performance of that thing if it's not configurable in any release we ship it in. So avoiding committing changes that are going to force one way of executing it in the cycle is probably a good thing, unless we're 100% sure we're not regressing. Go ahead.
That makes sense, and it's a good way to wrap this up. So, folks, please join the Eventlet removal room on Wednesday. You'll find the schedule on the PTG website as well as this Etherpad. For now, we'll take a short break before we can get back for the next discussion with Jeremy and Ildiko about bridging the gap between the community and contributor orgs. And we'll start that discussion at 10. So it'll be